Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 41st part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 222, The Coming Storm. Thank you all for coming today, Izuku said as he addressed his audience. Currently, Izuku was at the front of a police meeting room, speaking to a large group of pro-heroes. Shouldn't a member of the police be leading this meeting or a pro-hero? Kamui Woods asked. No. Anyway, let's move on to what we need to talk about. Izuku said. As all of you know, my facility was attacked, yet again. Unfortunately, this attack was far larger and far more successful than the previous ones. 2 Chaos Emeralds were stolen, and even worse, my daughter Kiba was kidnapped. And what exactly is a Chaos Emerald? Aizawa asked. They are gems containing immense power. Enough to sink a quarter of Japan back into the ocean. Izuku explained, causing everyone to look at him with shock and horror. Just holding one can grant its user immense power. Thankfully the human body can't fully utilize its power normally, but it's still exponentially more potent than Tigger, and does not share its negative side effects. You just had something like that in your house? Death Arms balked. As I'm sure you've realized by now, these must be returned, at all costs. Izuku continued. The same goes for my daughter. Unfortunately, we've only been able to locate one of the emeralds. Normally we'd be able to locate both of them, however, it seems like one was taken out of the sea, and thus out of the range of my trackers. We've also been unable to locate my daughter's energy signature, meaning she is likely being tampered with. What does that mean? MT Lady asked, out of both curiosity and concern. It means her body and mind are likely being altered, in the same way those Nomu were altered, Izuku said, trying not to choke on his own rage. What? Fat Gum shouted out in rage. Fortunately, I have a way to restore her should be the case, Izuku said. But with that in mind, the last known location of Kiba was close to the Chaos Emerald we currently know the location of. This means that the emerald we're tracking is likely in the hands of the League of Villains. More specifically, their leader, their true leader, All For One. All Might's eyes widened. Are we really going to discuss him here? With all these other heroes? Now All For One's specific abilities are on a need-to-know basis, and according to the government, none of you need to know, Izuku explained. Wait, hang on a minute, you're sending us to fight a guy, and you're not telling us what he can do? Death Arms objected. Everything about All For One is heavily classified. I had to fight the government, just to get the right to tell you about his existence. Izuku explained. Trying to get permission to let me tell you more is simply not worth it when time is against us. And most of you won't be fighting him anyway. All For One is extremely dangerous, even without the emerald. With it, you'd all be slaughtered in an instant. The only person here that will be going up against him is All Might. The rest of you will be in charge of evacuation and rescue, as well as fighting any Nomus he might send out during the battle. Izuku pressed a button on the remote he was giving, and a hollow projector showed up, giving everyone a look at a map of the city, with a large red ring around it. Everyone within this radius must be evacuated, as quickly as possible. Only issue is, as soon as we start evacuating, All For One is sure to catch on, so the fight will start quickly after. That's quite a large radius. Does this All For One really have such destructive power? Mandalay asked. With a Chaos Emerald, absolutely, Izuku said. But he's not the main reason. The main reason we're evacuating this large of an area is for Plan B. Should All Might be unable to defeat him, then our only option will be to rely on the reset bomb. A bomb? What kind of bomb do you have that hits harder than All Might? Nariko asked. It's not a matter of power. The reset bomb's ability is an expansion of the quirk of my daughter Eri. Izuku explained. It will return an area to how it was, many years ago before human civilization even touched these lands. And anyone that's caught in the blast, would simply cease to be. Rewinded to before they even existed. All of their matter erased. Unless you have an ability that specifically counters the bomb's effect, you will not survive this. No matter how powerful you are. Oh, well that's horrifying, Fat Gum commented. Am I the only one worried about the absurdly dangerous things you're just keeping in your house there, Midoriya? I won't lie and say that it's not concerning. Izuku sighed. But scientific progress will always move forward. We just have to live with that. Anyways, further details will be sent to you all privately, on how to help with the evacuation. For now, this meeting is over. All Might, I would like to talk to you privately at my house in a few hours. Endeavor, I actually need to talk to you immediately. I'll be meeting you at your home soon. What? For what reason? Endeavor asked. For reasons unrelated to any of this. It's a more private matter. Izuku said as he started leaving the room. Believe me, you don't want to talk about this here. Oh, and make sure your children are there too. It involves them. And without another word, he left. What on earth does he want? Endeavor wondered. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX at the table, waiting for Izuku to arrive. They heard the door open, and footsteps coming towards them. Is that Midoriya? How did get in without a key? Endeavor thought. His question was answered immediately, when Natsuo walked in, with Izuku behind him. Natsuo. Endeavor looked at his eldest living son in shock. Midoriya had said that this involved his kids, but to have convinced Natsuo to come here for this had to be important. Believe me, I don't want to be here. But I don't have a choice, Natsuo said, looking at his father with the usual disgust. It's too important. What's going on? Fuyumi asked nervously. Izuku sat down next to Natsuo and took out a file from his bag. I think it would be best if you read this. Do note that these are official government files, and everything in them has been verified. The green-haired teen slid the file over to Endeavor, who opened it up to see what this was all about. Only for his eyes to widen a second later, with a look of sheer disbelief taking over his face. No, that can't be. It's impossible. Dad, what is it? Fuyumi asked, but her father didn't respond. Instead, Endeavor started rapidly reading through the files. They could see his eyes move across the words on each page, looking at everything as closely as possible. And as he was reading, so engaged with the files was he, that some things started to fall out. Papers, and more importantly, photos. One of the photos fell onto the table, and Fuyumi and Shoto looked at it. A moment later, their expressions matched their father's. Tuya? Fuyumi gasped in disbelief, as she looked down at the photo of Tuya, in the Midoriya Foundation infirmary. Wait! I don't recognize this picture. When was this taken? Yesterday, Izuku answered. As it turns out, Tuya Todoroki is very much alive. That's impossible. Fuyumi shouted out, more confused and overwhelmed than she'd ever been in her life. And that said a lot. It's true, Natsuo said, causing everyone, including Endeavor, to turn their attention to him. I've seen him. Midoriya took me to meet him yesterday. It's him. How? Endeavor demanded. How is alive? Where did you find him? Why didn't he return home? Why is he still a child? I can only answer one of those questions, Izuku said. Tuya Todoroki somehow survived the incident that led everyone to believe he was dead, and later became the villain known as Dabi. Changing his appearance to disguise himself, and going on to commit several crimes, including many murders. Everyone except Natsuo looked at him with shock and horror. Fuyumi covered her mouth with her hands, as tears started forming out of the corners of her mouth. Tuya killed people, he became a villain. No, that's impossible. Tuya wanted to be a hero. Why would he do that? I don't know. But it's what happened. Izuku said, giving her a bit of a sympathetic look. Dabi joined the League of Villains in their attack on my home, and more specifically my children, and ended up as a victim of my daughter Aries' quirk, Rewind, returning him to his younger state and removing all memories he had up until the age he was rewinded to. Which is how he ended up with us. Of course, we were shocked to see the long-thought dead eldest child of the Todorokis, but we verified it through DNA and memory scans. Tuya Todoroki survived, and become the villain Dabi. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, unfortunately. That. Fuyumi was too shocked to say another word. She just sat there frozen, with tears rolling down her cheeks. Big brother. Why? We can only guess as to his motivations, Izuku said. Dabi was a loner, he never got close to anyone, and killed half the people he met. So he was the only one who knew the full story. But now those memories are lost. Of course, we could rewind him back into Dabi, but that is not advisable. I know why he did it, Natsuo growled, as he glared daggers at his father. It was because of you. What? Endeavor whispered, looking rather lost. As soon as you found out he wasn't your perfect heir, you threw him away like garbage. And replaced him. Natsuo shouted at his father as loud as he could, tears glimmering in his own eyes. The reason he didn't come back. It's because of you. I'd bet my life that he killed those people because of you too. Just to get back at you. Endeavor was at a loss for words, as his now second oldest living son's words hit him like All Might's fist. You're the reason he went down the path of a villain. Natsuo yelled passionately. He killed those people to get back at you for abandoning him. They're dead because of you. Enough! Izuku shouted firmly, giving Natsuo a warning glare. Do you remember what talked about on the right here? If you can't control your anger, then I might have to re-evaluate my offer. Indeedly Natsuo backed down, as fear and panic overtook his face. Wait. I'm sorry. I swear this doesn't happen often. It's just when I see his face. Offer? Shoto noted. What offer? Izuku sighed. This is where things got messy, well messier. Well, now that we have a young and alive Tuya Todoroki on our hands, the first thing we need to figure out is custody. Because I've heard about everything you've done to your family from Natsuo. And I have no intention of letting you have custody of that child, ever again. What? Endeavor stood up and looked at Izuku with shocked and outraged eyes. You can't do that. Fuyumi gasped. Actually I can, Izuku said. Remember, Toyua Todoroki was a villain. Even if he's just a child now, there is a precedent for the child's fall into evil, and that means he qualifies as an OPC. Which Diose can take custody of him, at any point should think it necessary to protect the public. And since Diose is basically under my full control, that means I can decide the matter of custody over Toyua, however I please. That's absurd. Fuyumi shouted. Yes, but what's more absurd is that you seem to be all for returning a child to an abusive parent, Izuku said harshly, glaring at her and causing her to back away a bit in fear. Is the position a teacher should be taking? If you genuinely believe that returning Toyua to the same unhealthy environment that brought him down the path of villainy, then I think I need to have a conversation with your employees. Fuyumi's eyes widened in fear, and she immediately went quiet. Enough. Endeavor growled, regaining his composure, if only a little bit. Threaten me all you wish, but leave my children out of it. Izuku glared at him. Pretending to be a father now won't help you. What is that you want, Midoriya? Endeavor barked. You didn't have to tell me this. With the type of power and influence you wield, you didn't need to tell any of us Tuya was alive. And what you said with Natsuo. What do you want from me? Izuku sighed and shook his head. I have two issues. 1. The public will eventually find out about this, and that will cause massive issues. I could either expose everything you've done to your family to explain myself and watch as trust in heroes dips massively, and causes massive chaos. Or I could not explain anything, and everyone will be against me for taking the child of the number 2 hero against his will. And the second issue I have is that Tuya has no memories of you replacing him like a broken TV, so he wants to be with his family. And I have a strong feeling that if I try to keep him away from his family or tell him what happened, it'll only cause serious trouble. And since yet again, I'm not letting him come back here, there's only one option. Give custody to Netsuo. Endeavor and Fuyumi were shocked, while Shoto raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that's a good idea? Netsuo can barely take care of himself. Netsuo opened his mouth to combat that statement, but Izuku spoke first. I have every intention of giving him a larger house, fit for raising a child, and giving him a better job, Izuku explained. As well as some instruction on how to take care of a child. But first I need to give him custody. Right now, custody still lies with Endeavor. I can take it away and give it Netsuo by force, but again, the public will find that odd, and start sticking their noses in things. So the best way for this to go is for you to sign away your custody, and give to Netsuo. Izuku then pulled out a stack of papers and a pen and slid them over to Endeavor. Sign this. If you cooperate, you'll be allowed to at least see your son again, and it'll maintain your public image better than the alternative. If you refuse, then you'll suffer the consequences. I'm only giving you one way forward, and you can decide if you want to make that path easier or harder. Now, chose. I have a lot of things I need to do today. Endeavor looked at the papers and slowly picked up the pen. It was all so much for him to process, and it all happened so fast that he couldn't even get his thoughts together. Fuyumi put her hand on his and gave him a kind look. Dad, I think you should sign this, at least we'll be able to see him again. I don't want us to be apart anymore. Endeavor looked at his daughter before looking back at the papers. It's not like I have a choice. And so, he signed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX ready to start the conversation. You look tired. All Might noted. I am tired, Izuku confirmed. I'm the most tired I've ever been. And yet I can't sleep at all, but enough about that. We have a lot to talk about. Firstly, I need you to get rewound by Eri. All Might gave a hesitant, but understanding look. Will I really not be able to stand a chance without doing that? You couldn't manage to kill him back when you were at full strength, and he didn't have a Chaos Emerald. Izuku pointed out. In this state, you won't even be able to hold him off. We need you back at full power if you want to stand a chance. I see. But what if it really does get rid of One for All? All Might asked. What then? Then I will have no choice. But to unleash Zero. Izuku said with a resigned look. All Might almost choked out some blood. Zero. Are you sure? We won't have any other options. The Gammas could hold off All for One, but if he's using the Chaos Emerald, then it's no good. Izuku explained. And Achiko's body isn't ready to fight against someone like All for One, especially not an empowered version. At that rate we might as well just give him One for All. Zero will be our only real option. But hopefully, all goes well and we won't have to resort to that. Izuku. Why don't I use one of those Chaos Emeralds? All Might asked. Izuku shook his head. One for All is pushing your body to the limit already. If it gets enhanced by a Chaos Emerald, at best it doesn't do much, and at worst you explode. At least that's what Might tells me. Damn it. All Might swore. And I suppose the same goes for young Uraraka. Basically. Izuku nodded. As I said, you and Zero are our only options. Well, that's not reassuring. All Might said as he looked down at his hands and sighed. All this wouldn't have happened if I just finished him all those years ago. If it wasn't for me, you and your children would have never had to suffer so much. I'm sorry, young Midoriya. We can't change the past, for the most part, Izuku said. All we can do is try to make sure we don't repeat our missteps. Right, this time the bastard dies. All Might swore. Speaking of him, I have some more news to give you, Izuku said. You remember All for One's puppet? Tamura Shigaraki? Yes, I recall he destroyed me quite a bit. All Might said. Well, he fell victim to Eri's quirk, and was reverted back to a child, Izuku explained. Allowing us to figure out his true identity. And his identity is Tenko Shimura, Nana Shimura's grandson. And then the room went completely quiet for just a moment. Crack! All Might's teacup fell to the ground and the tea that had been it splat all over the floor. Blood soon fell and mixed in the tea, as the shock of what had been said caused All Might to start bleeding from the mouth. That, what? Tenko Shimura went missing quite some time ago. He disappeared at the same time his family was found dead. Izuku explained. Notably, pieces of both his family and his home were found in massive piles of dust. Dust? But that means that. All Might trail off, not wanting to finish that sentence. That he killed his own family. Hopefully by accident. Izuku said. Some people reported seeing the child walk around the streets around that time, but after that, nothing. That's likely when All for One got his hands on him. I'm guessing he chose to raise the child as a minion, as a way to get back at you and Nana Shimura. All Might had to take that in for a second before his face twisted in absolute rage. All for One. How much must you destroy before you're satisfied? How many lives must you ruin? I'll swear on my master's soul, I'll kill you this time. With my own 2 hands. That would be great, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, Izuku said. At the very least we've undone most of the damage. Although I can't say things are going to be easy with him. Not only do I have to tell him that his family is dead, I also have to take away his quirk, before it comes in. I had mine do some tests on him, and apparently, somehow Tenko's quirk was weakened, and it's actually far stronger than we've seen. Not only can it decay things far faster, but anything that touches something that's decaying, will also decay. A quirk like that is enough to be labeled a level 2 OPC, and thus cause for quirk removal. I understand. All Might said as he hung his head. What a cruel twist of fate. Master sent away her child to keep him safe from All for One, and yet died at the hands of his own son before he then would go on to serve All for One. And now he's condemned to quirklessness. Just like I was. It's like some sick poem. I also have to take care of the girl. Toga Himiko. Or just Himiko now. Izuku's face scrunched up in disgust. I visited her parents, and not only were they just awful, they made it very clear they didn't want their daughter back. With parents like those, it's little wonder she ended up the way she did. It's heartbreaking how many terrible parents there are. All Might sighed as he got up to clean the tea and blood he'd spilled everywhere. Tell me about, Izuku said, as he looked down at his tea, and saw his own reflection. Tell me about it. Chapter 223, Thick as Blood. Monster. Demon child. Why? Why couldn't you be normal? You disgust me. How could we ever love something as loathsome as you? Himiko. Ah. Himiko woke up with a start, lurching upwards in her bed, pale and sweating. Whoa. Whoa. Hold on there, tiny girl. You are okay. You are safe. Vera said, quicking coming to assure her. Himiko looked at Vera with a mixture of caution and confusion. Who are you? And where am I? Quickly her nightmare was forgotten, as she realized she was not in her room, but somewhere completely unfamiliar, that being the Midoriya Foundation Infirmary. She was located in one of the beds, in the middle of 2 other sleeping children. Those being Tenko and Tuya, who appeared to have been roused by Toga's screaming. Ugh. Fuyumi, if you don't shut up. Tuya woke up groggily, and looked around, before quickly realizing he didn't know where he was. He quickly jumped up and aimed his palm at Vera. Where am I? Who are you? Did you kidnap me? Oh, my dad's gonna kick your ass when he finds out. What's going on? Tenko said, holding his blanket up over his mouth as if trying to hide. Calm down, little ones. You were not kidnapped, Vera assured them. How do I explain this? Some terrible things happened, and some of your memories are gone. You were involved in a villain attack, and rescued by children of Midoriya Foundation. That didn't clarify much to the kids, who all still looked at Vera with great confusion. Vera sighed. I am not good at explaining this. I have to wait for Mr. Midoriya. You don't need to wait, I got your message, Izuku said as he walked into the room, and laid eyes on all the kids at once. I see you're all awake. Well, at least I won't have to explain this multiple times. Who are you, and why are we here? Tuya asked sharply. You are in my house. Specifically, you're in the infirmary. Izuku answered. As for why you're here, all of you were affected by a time manipulation quirk. And your current selves were sent into the future, many years after the time you remember. We got sent to the future? Tenko asked with a starstruck look. Cool. So, if we're not being kidnapped, does that mean we can go home? Tuya asked, still giving Izuku a suspicion-filled look. Izuku winced. Not quite. You see, things have changed in the years you've been gone. Todoroki, you can leave, but you can't go home. Why not? Tuya asked pointedly, and Izuku was sure he was 2 seconds away from activating his quirk. Well, your father has been rather busy, so he's asked Natsuo to take care of you for the time being, Izuku explained. Tuya gave him a confused look. But Nats is younger than me? Yeah, but you're in the future now, so he's probably way older. Tenko pointed out. That's correct. Natsuo is a young man living on his own, and is more than capable of making sure you're okay. Izuku assured him. In fact, he's very happy to know you're alive. Your entire family is. After you all disappeared, everyone assumed you were dead, so they're so happy to know you're alive that they burst into tears. PFT, of course, they did. Cry, babies. Tuya mocked. And Himiko. Izuku shot her a sympathetic look. You can't go home, period. Your parents disowned you. Disowned? Himiko asked with a frown. She had a creeping feeling she knew what that word meant, but she wanted to confirm her suspicions. It means you are no longer a part of their family, Izuku explained sadly. You won't be able to use the Toga family name, and you won't be living with them anymore. Oh. Was all Himiko could say, as her face fell into a saddened, yet resigned expression. The worst part was, that honestly didn't surprise her. Well, their loss, I guess, Tuya said, trying to lift her spirits, only so he didn't feel so awkward. Look on the bright side, yeah, I got nothing that sucks. Izuku put his hand on her shoulder, causing her to look up at him. I'm sorry. But, at least now you won't have to deal with those two. I've taken the liberty of adopting you. So you'll be living here with me. Himiko's eyes widened. Really? Why? Izuku smiled. Because you seemed like you needed help. So you really going to help me, just because I need it? Himiko just didn't understand what he was saying. Do you know about my quirk? Izuku nodded. Yup, and it doesn't make me think any worse of you for it. You don't need to be afraid to be yourself. Just don't hurt anyone. Himiko was looking up at him with starry eyes, in a way that reminded him of how he used to look at All Might. He patted her on the head, before moving on to Tenko. And immediately all the positive energy from that last exchange faded, but he tried not to let it show on his face. But Tenko could tell that whatever Izuku had to say to him wasn't good, from the way his smile immediately turned into a frown, and fear seized him. Tenko, your family died in an accident soon after you disappeared, Izuku told him solemnly. I'm sorry. Oh. Was all Tenko could say to that. He was sure he should have felt angry, or sad, or anything. But hearing that, and having to process what that meant and how he felt about it, was so overwhelming, that he just felt numb. Ah. That's rough, buddy. Tuya winced, not really sure what to say after a bombshell like that. I think I'm just gonna go find something to eat. You hungry? You look hungry. I'll get you some food. And with that, Tuya jumped off the bed and ran as fast as he could away from that depressing conversation. From now on, you'll be living with me just like Himiko, Izuku explained to him. Aha, Tenko said, still very out of it. That means we're gonna live together. Himiko said to Tenko excitedly. We should be friends. Tenko didn't respond. Izuku put his hand on Himiko's shoulder. He's going through a lot right now, let's just give him some space. Let's go show you two to your rooms, and then you can meet all your other new friends. Okay. Himiko said, turning to Tenko one last time. I hope you feel better, Tenko. Then she hopped off the bed, and Izuku picked up Tenko with one arm, before holding Toga's hand and guiding them out of the infirmary. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX house. What kind of money does that guy have? Are you lost? Tuya turned around and saw Kei standing there smiling as usual. Hi there. I'm Kei. Kei Midoriya. Kei said, introducing herself. Nice to meet ya. Hi. Yeah, I guess I'm lost. Tuya admitted. Do you know where the kitchen is? Of course. Just follow me. Kei said as she started leading the way. We'll be there in a hot minute. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. They quickly arrived at the kitchen and found Fuku cooking up a lot of food. Hi, Fuku. Kei greeted. Ah. Fuku jumped, stumbling a bit to not fall off the step stool she was using to reach the stove. Kei. I told you not to do that, and wait. Who is that behind you? Is that another villain? Please don't take away any more of my sisters. Please. Who are you calling a villain? Tuya shouted, glaring daggers at Fuku. EAP. I'm sorry, I just got really scared. Please don't kill me. Fuku panicked as she started looking for a place to run. Sorry about that, Fuku's super scared of strangers, and so she says weird stuff like that out of fear, Kei explained. But she's super nice, and her cooking is super yummy. Here, try some. Kei reached up and grabbed a bowl of soup, before handing it over to Tuya. Tuya grabbed the warm bowl and looked at it skeptically, before taking a spoon and taking some of it into his mouth. And immediately his mouth widened. This is good. All right. I'll take this and forgive you for calling me a villain. Just never do it again, got that? Fuku gave a sigh of relief. Once again I'm saved by my cooking. I'm so glad I spent time learning that. As Tuya continued eating his soup, he noticed the tables covered in plates of food. That's a lot of food? How many people live here? A lot, Kei said. All my brothers and all my sisters. And my friends, and the workers, and Daddy. If there's that many, then why didn't I see anyone on the way here? Tuya asked, before slurping up the broth. Fuku slumped, and her expression changed from a fearful frown to a depressed frown. They're all either in the training room or outside. Or in their rooms. Things haven't been the same since Kiba got kidnapped. Did you say training room? Tuya immediately started paying more attention. Where? I can show you. Kei volunteered. Follow me. Bye, Fuku. I'll see you in a little bit. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Hi, Giza. Kei greeted as they walked into the training room and saw the man rat standing there. How's the training? Not well for the most part, Giza said, as he turned back to the kids in the training room. The triplets were currently doing what they would call training for team coordination. But what it actually looked like was a bunch of wild dogs tearing apart a most destroyed punching bag, and every now and then breathing fire on it. Shiruku was panting and laying down at the bottom of the treadmill. And Nise was lifting weights with her vectors. Everyone is a bit too riled up to really focus on any of my advice. Giza sighed. Ken, Nara, and Sheena are outside running. And Sanson, Mu, and AKA are doing stealth training outside with Sori. What about Fu, Yami Netsu, and Lo? Kei asked. Netsu is doing flight training. Giza sighed. Against the advice of pretty much everyone. As for the other three, they went to the lab for some special training. So can I train here? Tuya asked as he made some fire in his hands. You are the Todoroki child, correct? Giza asked. Very well, your brother will be here soon. Until then, we have some fire-resistant dummies. I wonder if you can damage them. Tuya smirked. Oh, I'll do more than that. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX arrived, and it was time for Tuya to go. Izuku walked Tuya outside, where his brother was waiting outside his car. The moment the brothers saw each other, their eyes widened. "Holy shit, little bro. You really did get bigger," Tuya shouted out in surprise. "Tuya!" Netsuo's eyes became wet, as tears started emerging. In a flash, Netsuo ran at his brother and engulfed him in a massive hug. "Wah! Hey, not so tight," Tuya complained as he tried to struggle out of the embrace, to no avail. "I'll hug you as tight as I want," Netsuo sobbed as he hugged his brother. "It's been so long." "Okay, well, for me it was a couple hours, so stop getting all emotional about it." "It's gross," Tuya complained. Izuku smiled at the reunion happening before his eyes. It was a small silver lining. One he desperately needed. Chapter 224, Mad Science. Chaos Spear. Le shouted out, as he unleashed 5 chaos spears, at a target on a wall. Boom! 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 Lu was currently in the lab, training inside a test chamber with some stuff on his body that the scientists overseeing him were using to collect data. Growling. Lu growled as he stared at the singed but mostly unharmed target on the reinforced metal wall. More. Lu charged more chaos spears in between his hands and launched them at the target. Boom. 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 Recharge speed reduced by 20%. Power increased by 15%. One of the scientists reported to Mai, who was overseeing everything. Stress on the body has increased by 5%. Interesting, Mai said as he looked over at Lu. Maybe the frustration and anger is helping him hone his powers more. If we could get that same focus while at the same time being calm, maybe we could get him to optimize his chaos energy usage. Chaos Javelin. Le shouted, as he quickly charged 2 red energy attacks in his hands, before launching them at the wall. Kaboom! Kaboom! The 2 attacks hit the wall hard, causing the room to shake, and making very small cracks. Recharge time reduced by 50%. Strain on body increased by 20%. One of the scientists reported. Chaos Javelin. Lu shouted, as he put even more into the attack, and launched it at the wall, making even bigger cracks appear. And Li's inhibitor rings started to glow. Power increased by 20%. Strain on body increased by an additional 15%. One of the scientists said. Inhibitor rings starting to overheat. Lu, slow it down. You're starting to go overboard. Mai said into the mic, speaking to Lu over the speakers in the chamber. TCH. Lu was tempted to just ignore her, but he knew he'd worry Maria if he went much further. Damn it. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX bed in an analysis chamber. Alright, everything's stable. You should dash. Can you turn me into a cyborg? Lou suddenly asked. Mai's eyes went wide, very much off-put by the sudden question. Excuse me? My body is too damn weak, Lou said, looking down at himself with disdain. So if we turn me into a cyborg, then maybe I could use my powers better. If I could have just kept going a little bit more after using Chaos Missile, then I could have beaten up that Frost guy and gotten Kiba back. But because I was too weak, Kiba's gone, and Midoriya running around looking he's about to kill someone. Mai sighed. We have looked into doing cybernetic augmentations. However, our experiments, while successful, have only been done on small animals, such as rats. We've never tried doing anything like that on a human, and we don't know what might happen. And with you, it gets even more complicated. Remember, your body reacts to chaos energy the same way everyone else does. And your quirk is so unique, and quite frankly, unpredictable, that messing with it to any significant degree could have drastic consequences. Like your death. TCH. Lou spat, a look of frustration overtaking his face. Can't we do anything about this? The only thing you can do is practice, Mai told him. Right now, your use of chaos energy is not exactly practical. Leading to a lot of wasted energy, leading to you getting exhausted much faster. It may be slow, but it's safe. And safety is our #1 priority. Got it? Lou didn't look satisfied by that answer at all, but he also knew he had no choice but to accept it. Got it. Knock knock knock. Come in, Mai said, turning her attention to the door. A scientist walked in. Ma'am. There's been a sudden development with the shadow fractals. We'd like you to take a look. Got it, Mai said, before turning back to Lou. Sorry, but I have to go see this. I get it. It's always busy around here. Lou said, before teleporting away back to his room. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX
power.
No matter how many Grimm he created, it seemed all they could do in the face of sheer overwhelming power was stall for time. Even with the negative energy magnet, he was still limited in what he could make.
But no more.
Now, not only had the battle filled him with a massive amount of negative energy, but there would also be another battle happening soon that was sure to give him even more. Plus, he didn't have to create anything like Monstra again, so he got to focus all of it on this project. But that alone wasn't what gave him confidence in this newest Grimm. Because he had some materials that would help him make the best Grimm that he could.
Alright kid, here it is. Dr. Hata said, handing Yami a small jar.
In that jar was a smaller version of a chaos engine.
A chaotic heart.
Thank you, Yami said, giving them a bow of appreciation. Right now he didn't have enough power to create a proper vessel for this, but he knew that would change soon. Soon he would have Grimm who could stand up against the mightiest of foes. He just had to wait a little bit longer.
XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Meanwhile, in the botanist's laboratory, was Fu, standing out in one of the testing yards.
Uchi was there with him, giving him a rather concerned look.
Are you sure about this? It'll be fine. Ma said it wouldn't kill me. And what doesn't kill me, I can come back from. Fu said. Kaiosei wants this too. So I can't just back out now.
And the Gammas are watching, so we don't need to worry if I go on a rampage. Uchi sighed and shook her head.
Oh, who am I kidding? After what happened with Kiba, I know there's no convincing you otherwise. Just, never mind.
Here. Uchi then handed him a vial, filled with red liquid. This was known as might concentrate. Most of the fruit from the tree of might was made up of water. So, naturally, Uchi and her people juiced and distilled the fruit, creating pure might. This was even more potent than the might fruit, although its effects were even more dangerous. After what happened, Fu went looking for a way to increase his power, and the might fruit came up. Due to Fu's quirk, he figured out he could use the fruit almost as much as he pleased, enhancing the power of both himself and Kyosei. Only issue was that it tore up his body even faster than normal, but so long as he had a full meal after whatever fight he was in, that wouldn't be a problem.
So naturally, the next question was, could he handle pure might?
The answer was also yes. And so the next step in Fu's mind was to kick it up a notch.
Or several. Might concentrate.
Made by concentrating several glasses of pure might into one vial. If any normal person ingested this, they would die, almost immediately. After checking with Mai that this wouldn't affect Fu's chaos energy like the fractals might, she gave the thumbs up on allowing it to be tested. Under heavy supervision, of course. After giving Fu the vial, Uchi ran away, heading back to the relative safety of the lab. Fu looked at the vial and undid the cork.
You ready, partner?
Yes.
Kyosei said in his head.
All right. Fu lifted the vial up to his lips and drank it.
A second later, everything went black.
XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX He was inside of a metal room that was absolutely covered in blood. I'm guessing things didn't go well, Fu said to himself as he got to his feet. Hey Fu, said Dr. Hada's voice through a speaker. Looks like you're finally back to normal. What happened? Fu asked immediately. While the might concentrate sent you into a hunger-fueled rampage, and you and Kyosei turned into a giant flesh monster that tried to eat everyone, Hada explained. So we trapped you in here thanks to the gammas and kept feeding you animals until you went back to normal. So maybe stick to the regular pure might. Or just the fruit. Well, that sucks. Fu sighed. If only I could use the fractals. If only. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Dr. Garaki said as he got ready for an operation. All for One was laid down on an operation table, his body was filled with tubes, wires, and other things. Next to him was a table, with various tools on it. And next to that was a separate table, with the Chaos Emerald that was acquired from Cooler on it. Lastly, there was a vial, filled with something else Cooler had stolen from the Midoriya Foundation. A fluidized fractal, filled with Ares power. Yes, it is indeed a grievous loss. All for One side. Hearing that the descendant of Nana Shimura, All Might's precious master, was compatible with my quirk, and was easily moldable, filled my dead heart with joy. And all that time I spent on him. What a shame. Still, the results were far more positive than negative, don't you agree? Oh, absolutely. Garaki said, as he put on his gloves. The Chaos Emerald is worth at least 5 Tomuras. Hell, I'm kidding myself. Its value can't be compared to him. And thanks to our other treasures, we can make full use of it. Garaki went over to a machine, and put his hand on the button. Now then. Shall we begin the operation? Yes, I'd like to have this done as soon as possible. All for One said. Very well. Good night, my master, and when you wake up. Garaki pressed the button. You will be a god. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX upon the shadow fractals. They were no longer in the shape of long crystals, rather they were now perfect spheres, containing varying numbers of yellow lights inside them.
From 1 to 7.
They looked kind of like stars.
We only just noticed the transformation.
One of the scientists said, looking a little ashamed.
It happened rather quickly, you see.
Well, we already knew they were absorbing negative energy, but for them to rapidly transform.
Mai took a closer look.
That's not all that changed. One of the scientists said. The crystals have become harder.
More durable.
and they've gained certain unique properties to them. The 2-star ball seems to releasing some sort of toxic gas and makes the area around it hazardous. The 3-star ball freezes anything it touches, while the 4-star ball does the opposite, burning anyone it comes into contact with. The Give star ball has been seen giving off electricity, while the 6-star ball has started blowing wind and turning the air around it into water. Lastly, the 7-star ball absorbs organic matter, another scientist explained. What about the 1-star ball? Mai asked. That one has absorbed the most negative energy out of all of them, but it has yet to display any quirk-like abilities aside from that, a scientist explained. Interesting, Mai said, before sighing. Well, we don't have time to worry about these now. Keep them under surveillance, but move on to other projects. Let's just hope this doesn't blow up in our faces. Chapter 225, Project Deicide. This is Myru Jikin, reporting on Project Deicide. Project Deicide. With the rise of extremely powerful individuals, concerns have arisen that the powerful few will one day use their power to rule over or destroy the weaker masses. It is these concerns that Project Deicide wishes to address. The goal of Project Deicide is to create weapons capable of neutralizing the most powerful individuals alive, by any means necessary. EA. The Everything Annihilator, or EA, is a device Mr. Midoriya conceptualized himself. The idea behind it is essential to make use of teleportation technology to tear apart targets like blender tears apart fruit. But even more so, the blast it shoots will be an unstable portal that will transport its target to a different location, possibly a different dimension. However, due to the portal being unstable, instead of bringing a target completely to one destination, the portal will change its destination rapidly, meaning that parts of the target will be teleported and scattered across the multiverse, atom by atom. Not only that, but since EA would be transporting everything, it'll also be displacing all the air around it, causing a kind of vortex to form, which would suck anything around it into the blast. This would be without a doubt one of the most powerful and dangerous weapons in history, but there is one issue. We've made little progress in actually making it. So far, the only real progress we've made is actually creating the unstable portal that this whole idea relies on. And while we were able to make it, we couldn't create it into a blast or stabilize it, so it's a long way to go until EA is even close to completion. Although even if it is made, I hope it never has to be used. Reset bomb. The reset bomb is a very simple idea. Take Eri Midoriya's rewind quirk and make a bomb out of it. So we did. You see, while we were making the Chaos Engine, there was a rejected design that was bigger and had an issue with exploding if a significant amount of force was applied. So naturally this was used as the base of the bomb. We added about 6 of the rewind quirk fractals and bound them to the core of the bomb, and done. The bomb's blast radius and destructive power are not particularly impressive. The impressive part comes in when any organic matter is caught in the blast. Any living thing that is caught in the blast of this bomb will be instantly rewinded back into nothing. They die. They instantly die. No organic matter can survive being hit by this blast, regardless of any level of power they may have. Unless, that is, they have a quirk that directly counters the effects of the bomb, such as the fractal we have, which will protect the user from the direct effects of chaos energy-related attacks. Still, while this weapon is powerful, it's rather impractical. While its blast radius is nothing special when compared to other high-powered bombs, it's still very considerable, and thus it's very dangerous to use in populated areas. Dagger of Destiny. The so-called Dagger of Destiny is a very simple weapon. Probably the most simple weapon to be made under Project Deicide. The Dagger of Destiny is a dagger made from a fractal. This fractal's abilities allow it to ignore any possible defensive abilities a quirk may give you. No matter how damage resistant you are, or how your quirk might keep you from being harmed, none of that matters in the face of this dagger. If someone stabs you with it, you are going to take damage.
It also nullifies regenerative properties that quirks are responsible for.
It's a knife that renders the most powerful of people as vulnerable as a regular person on the streets if you can stab them with it.
Yeah, that's kinda the big issue with this weapon.
You have to actually stab them with it, and since its intended purpose is to be used on the most powerful people on Earth, that won't be easy.
Unless you have a quirk that makes it easy. Not only that, but it's not hard to destroy.
Sure, it won't snap off when you try to stab someone, but a reasonably powerful attack will shatter it instantly. But, if you have the chance to maybe use it as a sneak attack, it'll prove effective, probably.
Destabilization formula.
All quirks have a certain stability. Stable quirks are quirks that typically have little drawback.
Mutant quirks, for example.
Other quirks, typically emitter quirks, are less stable. Izuku Midoriya's quirk is a good example, as the quirk stability membrane is so thin that she has issues controlling it. An insufficient stability membrane can also lead to your quirk hurting you. Endeavor is an example of this. But it's normally difficult and rare for a quirk to completely overwhelm the stability membrane and cripple/kill the user. But what if we changed that?
During our studies attempting to infuse lifeforms with chaos energy, we found that if not careful, the chaos energy will only boost a quirk's power, and not its stability,
causing the user to suffer an extreme overload.
Most cases of which end in death. Note, while chaos emeralds usually increase a quirk's stability, there are instances where a quirk's unusual properties lead to the emerald making the quirk completely unstable.
So, what if we weaponize this?
And thus, the destabilization formula was made.
This liquid, when injected, will increase the power of a quirk, without increasing its stability.
Now this has various effects, depending on the victim.
On a quirkless person, it's useless. On a person with a weak quirk, it'll increase their power, making it just a little harder to control. On a person with a quirk of average power, it'll do the same thing. On a person with a somewhat impressive quirk, it'll increase power while also heavily increasing the drawback. On a person with a very strong quirk, it'll have very damaging effects, possibly killing or crippling the victim.
And on a person with an overwhelming powerful quirk, death is a certainty. Currently, the only way to use this is by injecting a target, limiting its viability. Ways to turn this into a gas or something similar are currently being explored, with little success. Chapter 226, check. The attack on All for One would be happening tomorrow.
It was a bit fast, but Izuku just wanted all of this done and over with, so he made sure to spare no resources when it came to getting this in order as quickly as possible. But that didn't mean he didn't want this done right. Sure, he wanted this over with, but not to the point where he was willing to rush the process to the breaking point. This was an operation of the utmost importance.
If anything went wrong, it could end in absolute catastrophe. So before everything started, he needed to check over the entire operation and make sure everything was in place. And so here he was at the lab,
making sure their attack force was ready. In front of him was All Might, the Gammas, Hawks, Protoman, and Sai. All Might had been restored and now looked the way he did in his prime. Although he still was using the dregs of One for All, as Eri had been unable to restore it due to its massive power. But at least he didn't have to worry about his body failing him.
Alright, so is everyone aware of the plan? Izuku asked them. All Might will engage All for One. Gamma 2 and I will support him from a respectable distance.
And Sai will assist from long range,
Gamma 1 explained.
While Hawks lead the other heroes in evacuation.
Meanwhile, Sori and Protoman will rescue Kiba once we locate her.
That is correct, Izuku said, as Sue came up behind him, with a suitcase in her hands. And to aid you in this task, I have decided to give you these.
Sue opened the case, revealing 2 Chaos Emeralds. Hawks. Sai. You'll be using these during the attack, Izuku said, as Sue walked forward, and gave the emeralds to the 2 of them.
Hawks picked up the emerald, and immediately he could feel its power, coursing through his body and his wings.
Man. This is certainly something. Are you sure about giving this to me, sir? Sai said, looking at the emerald. I failed you during the last attack after all. No. I failed you. Izuku said while shaking his head. I should have given you more forces to work with. It was basically just you and a bunch of children, powerful children but still children, versus some of the strongest villains out there. And even then, you just barely didn't finish the job perfectly. I have faith you'll pull through here. And besides, your quirk is the best suited for this task anyway. Izuku sighed. Of course, if you fail, I'll have no choice but to release Zero. That monster is finished? Hawks asked. Pretty much, Izuku confirmed. He's being kept in a kind of dream state and can be activated at any time. I do hope you know the consequences of him being released. Yeah, catastrophic power. Could destroy a small country in a day. Nearly unstoppable. Gamma 2 said nonchalantly, as he leaned on Gamma 1. We get it, boss. But you don't have to worry. A villain like All for One could never hope to overcome us superheroes. And we have 2 emeralds, while he only has 1. True, but if you think about it, we can only enhance 2 people, while All for One can essentially enhance a whole army with all the quirks he stole. Izuku pointed out. Not to mention, we don't know what other tricks he might have under his sleeve. So be careful, and don't do anything stupid. We just need you to stall for time, while we evacuate the area, and drop the reset bomb. Speaking of which, Izuku walked up to All Might and handed him Fractal. This Fractal will keep you safe from the bomb's effect. Make sure it doesn't break, otherwise, we'll have to rely on the Gammas to hold off All for One. Since their status as androids, keep them safe from the bomb. Understood, young Midoriya. I will keep that in mind. All Might said as he stored the Fractal. Alright, meeting dismissed, Izuku said. As he went to continue checking up on the rest of the operation. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. So this is the reset bomb, Izuku said, as he finally laid his eyes on the device from an observation chamber. The bomb itself looked more like a giant mutated seed, with multicolored vines growing all around it. Apparently, the outside was just an added shell, to keep it from exploding at the slightest touch. The bomb is fully operational, and will be ready for tomorrow's operation, Uchi reported. We also have 2 backups, just in case. Perfect. Izuku nodded. Continue with your work. And keep a close eye on these. Can never be too careful. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX
small up front. Only made for one driver, with larger back halves, capable of carrying large bombs. All the bomber ships have been tested, and are fully operational, I said. They're all ready for tomorrow. Izuku nodded. Good. And you're sure you want to be the one piloting them? That's a lot of pressure. Mai nodded. Yes, sir. I want to make sure everything goes the way I want it to. And you know what they say. If you want something done right, do it yourself. I get that. Izuku said. Well, just make sure to get some practice in. And get plenty of rest before the operation. Understood? Yes, sir, Mai said. Good. Izuku nodded. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX needed to check the evacuation shelters. Due to the danger of the situation, simply getting everyone to a safe distance wouldn't be enough. If something went wrong, or a calculation on the bombs went off, everyone they tried to save would die. So shelters had to be made. These shelters appeared to be simply abandoned buildings at first. Just brick walls with a large metal door on the outside. This was necessary to avoid suspicion. Izuku pulled up to one of these buildings in his limo, and the metal doors opened. The inside still didn't seem all that impressive. The walls were made of metal, and all that was there was a ramp, heading underground.
They drove down the ramp and headed deep underground.
After a few minutes, they arrived at the end of the ramp, and into a large underground area that was capable of housing tens of thousands of people. There were beds, supplies, food, and other things just in case, for some reason, they had to stay down here for a while.
They kept driving through the area until they reached the opposite side. There was yet another door.
This one was much thicker, and guarded by 2 soldiers.
"Halt!
Identify yourself," one of them said, walking up to the car.
Izuku opened his window, showed them his face, and then gave them a card.
They took the card, and looked it over for a while, before giving it back to him.
"Sorry for the wait, Mr. Midoriya."
No.
"I'm glad you're doing your job properly,"
Izuku said, taking back his card and closing his window. The doors opened, and Izuku was driven inside. Behind these doors was the anti-warp generator, being guarded by soldiers and pro-heroes alike, and worked on by engineers and scientists. The car stopped and Izuku exited the vehicle. Looking up at the building-sized devices, as the head scientist in charge here ran up to him.
"Sir, everything is fully operational and ready for use," the man said.
"And the other generators?"
Izuku asked.
They had set up multiple generators, in multiple locations, just in case any of them were damaged or destroyed.
"All fully operational," the scientist said. "Everything is ready on our end."
"And the towers?"
Izuku asked.
"Ready to use,"
the scientist said.
"Good work."
Izuku nodded, giving a sigh of relief.
It was finally time to head back home. Although he still had one thing he needed to check on when he got there.
XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX.
Izuku arrived back at his office and found Giza there waiting for him.
"I trust everything is in order?" Izuku asked, as he sat down on the couch and relaxed.
"I did a proper inspection of all the participants of this mission," Giza confirmed. "And I found 13 traitors. Most of them belonged to the MLA, but some attempted to leak information to All for One. All of them were dealt with."
"Excellent," Izuku said, having Sue serve him some tea.
"Everything is in place.
And things should move smoothly. Assuming there are no unmanageable surprises on All for One's part. You've prepared about as well as you can. Rest. Lest exhaustion be your downfall," Giza advised.
"Right."
Izuku sighed.
"Although it's hard for me to fall asleep,
knowing that Kiba is still in the hands of that monster."
"About that," Giza said, stroking his beard.
"Ms. Uraraka came to visit you.
And has been waiting for your return for quite some time now."
"What?"
"Tell her I'm here then,"
Izuku told them.
"I don't want to keep her y-dash." Suddenly, Achiko opened the door and burst in.
"Izuku." "Oh, Achiko. I'm sorry I kept you waiting for so long,"
Izuku said, giving her a forced and tired smile. Achiko frowned and looked at Sue and Giza.
"Could you two give us some time alone?" Giza nodded, and Sue looked to Izuku, who nodded, giving her permission to leave. Once they left, Achiko took a seat right next to Izuku and gave him a concerned look.
"You don't have to put on that fake smile.
Your eyes tell me everything I need to know." Izuku wanted to just dismiss that and tell her he was fine.
But for whatever reason, maybe it was because he knew it was pointless, maybe it was because of the trust he had in Achiko, maybe it was because he was just that tired. But he instantly deflated on the couch, and a look of grief overtook his face. "They took her, Achiko," Izuku muttered.
"They took my daughter. My Kiba.
They took her, Achiko."
Tears started coming out of the corners of his eyes.
"I was supposed to protect her. And now she's in the hands of those bastards."
Izuku sobbed. "Doing who knows what to her." Achiko quickly brought him into a hug and started rubbing circles on his back. I should have added more bodyguards. I should have given them better weapons. A Chaos Emerald. Anything. Izuku cried into her shoulder. I failed her. Izuku. Look at me.
Hachiko said, moving Izuku up so he could look her in the eyes.
You spent countless hours preparing for that fight.
Spent more money than some countries spend in a year to try and keep them safe, used some of the most powerful and advanced technology in the world, and hired some of the most powerful and talented people in the country. All of this so you could defend what is essentially an orphanage. And it still wasn't enough somehow.
That is insane.
There is no reasonable person who could blame you for what happened, because what happened was insane. No one could have predicted all the stuff they would throw at you for no good reason.
If you knew what would have happened, I'm sure things would have turned out differently. And now that things have gotten like this,
I'm sure you get her back.
Without fail. Izuku didn't know what to say to that.
He still wished he'd added at least one more guard on Monsta, but at the same time, he knew Hachiko was right. More so, she was especially right about him getting Kiba back. He didn't care what it cost. He would get his daughter back. No matter what All for One had up his sleeve. Tomorrow he'd throw everything at the villains. But today, he would let everything out. He'd been forced to stay strong this entire time, and not show just how much this whole thing was affecting him, for the sake of the children. So he had plenty of tears stored up, and Hachiko was willing to stay there until he was all out.
That will be it for this part.
I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 42.
If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.